it's there in that come on, move. So I then did a second talk on this. I was asked to do a talk for Integration Down Under, which is based in Australia. And I decided to talk about a different aspect of our EDI solution. And what I talked about there, I talked about what we call our customer stream solution and our batch extract solution. So our customer stream solution is taking orders that come in from our customers and we're putting it into our My Bidfood application so that the orders can be fulfilled. The batch extract stream is where we're sending invoices and catalogs out to our customers. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. I'm not going to go into detail there. That video, if you want to actually have a look at it, has all the details how we did it. So we'll just move on to the next slide. Come on.
What number do you want?
I want to move on to the next slide, Colin.
Which one, number 10?
So if you just press page down or something,
Yeah.
it'll move on.
Demo.
Yeah.
No. It's coming out, it's clicking over here, but it's not coming up there.
Can we have a look? Sorry, guys. See what's happening here. We have some technical difficulties here.
Recast it.
How do I do that?
Sorry. Do a duplicate and see.
But that's not quite what we want.
And then you try to click on it again.
Yep.
No.
Okay, it's moving on. Do a full screen.
Yeah, we should have been presenting the slides from your computer as well. But people can't see.
Let's go F5 on that. F5 to run. Oh, sorry. You've got a function lock. Sorry, from current slide. On there.
Okay.
Move to slide 8. Going to 9.
You resume slideshow.
Let's try it again. Do this again. Oh, excellent.
Normal transition will start in okay. I think we might be ready to go again.
So the third time I talked about this, I talked about a particular problem that any integration developer would have, and that is how do you map messages in Azure? And I gave a talk that was based around our solutions and different problems we had. And I think I ended up that talk by saying that Microsoft really needed to give us a tool in Azure that would help us do our mapping. And I walked through all the options we have for mapping messages. Not much has changed since that time, except that I did notice there was at one of the latest integration conventions, Microsoft announced that they're working on a mapping tool for Azure, which will allow you to map JSON to XML or XML to XML to whatever. It'll be really interesting to see that tool. I'll just wait for Colin to. Are we good, Colin?
Let you know in a second.
Yep. Are we good now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I suppose what I want to say, I've talked about this 3 times before. I don't want to go over I don't want to go over things that I've already covered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly walk you through how we monitor our logic apps and how we troubleshoot them. And at the same time, it's going to explain to you how our solutions are put together. So I'm going to have to go and do the demo actually on my laptop. But what I'm going to show you is how we track a customer order from the point that it comes into our process to the point that it actually goes to BidDirect. And then I'll come back and then I'll show you an architectural diagram that explains that. So what I'm trying to show here is how we do the logic app monitoring, because a lot of what we do is based around the way that we do our monitoring. I'll go and start that and then I'll talk a bit more. So let's see if I can. I'm just going to escape from there. And I'm going to bring up a view of one of the very first way that we monitor our solutions. I'm a little bit conscious of the time because I want to finish this in a quarter of an hour. I want to do the whole talk in 45 minutes. So what I'm showing there is a picture of. I have to reshare that. Okay.
Share screen. Share that window.
Okay. All right. Just one moment. So how do you share the window?
Present.
Present.
Share screen.
Share screen. And entire screen or
window.
Or window. So what I want to share is this screen here.
Okay, hopefully people can see this. So I'll come out here and talk a little bit about this. So in the BizTalk world, we had a customized database, which was really a reporting database and stored some configuration values. When we did our proof of concept, Alistair and I had many discussions about whether we should retain that in Azure, or whether we should use just application insights. At the end of the day, we decided we would retain our customized database and bring it into Azure. So we migrated that to an Azure SQL database. And it sort of serves its purpose. It probably was a good decision to not rely solely on application insights. So what I'm showing there is it's just a query of this database, which if we're looking for a particular order, we would go in and we would run a script like this, and what it's doing, it will give us, the query's taking a bit longer to run. It gives us a representation of, you can see the country codes down here. At the moment, it's only Australia and New Zealand because the UK hasn't started yet. And we have down here the purchase order transactions. And we also have the trading partner IDs that we're dealing with. So what I want to do is I want to make this a little bit different, because at the moment they're just recent orders coming in. So I want to take the situation where we're looking for a particular order that came in 3 days ago. So what we do is we just change the query slightly. We know what the trading partner is. It's one of our customers here. And we know that we want to reduce the query to be 3 days ago. And this should run. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of the purchase orders. So I've got a query that says to me, I've got a problem with this purchase order coming into our system. I want to find that in Azure. So I'm going to copy that to a clipboard. And then what I then am going to go to is I'm going to go to the Logic App Management Preview application. And I'm going to, this is a view of, I think it's New Zealand transactions. And I'm just going to drill down on that. You'll notice that at the moment that management preview only is doing the last 24 hours. And I just want to filter down on, I know it's going to be a Subway Logic app, of which I can see there's 3 types there. I know that the one I'm dealing with is a customer pre-processing. So we have a concept I explained in some of my other talks about how I like to have a pre-processing logic app, which does some work. It then gets persisted, and then we do further processing on it. So I'm going to look at, just going to look at this is a view of all the runs or all the orders that have actually come into this particular logic app in the last 24 hours. And you'll see that there's a tracking ID down there. We've configured our systems for customer orders or for our customer stream to have a tracking ID of the purchase order number. For our other streams like supplier stream, we use different tracking IDs. For our batch extract stream, we'd use the invoice number. Now, you remember that this occurred 3 days ago. So we want to go in and we actually want to just pull back. We want to change all the runs that occurred in the last 3 days. And now what we need to do, we need to filter on the purchase order ID that we're looking for. And if I'm lucky, it brings back one record. So this tells me that 3 days ago, this purchase order came into our system on that Logic app. And the important bit that I need to get hold of is the logic app run ID. So then the next step to find out, we wanted to actually drill down on the instance of our logic app that this order came in on. So this is the logic app that's doing the work. And here we go. I'm going to put that run ID in. And it looks like I must have copied the wrong, must not have copied it correctly.
That's yes. You should go to the subway.
Oh, well spotted, Mary. So Mary's been here, only just left BidOne, and she knows the, so we want Subway. Very good. Well spotted, thank you. So the one we want is there. And this time when I put that in there, I don't get an ugly message. And then if I click on that, it's going to go straight to the run that order was on. So this is showing you our customer pre-processing logic app. We actually have one of those for every specific customer and order that's coming in. This one, what we're doing is we're picking up a file from a FTP location, and so it's polling that FTP location. It picks it up. The next step, so in our other pre-processing logic apps, we might have a different trigger. It might be an HTTP trigger. It might be, some other trigger. We then save a copy. We're a bit, we actually save a lot of stuff in all our runs. So we save a copy of the order almost immediately down to Blob Store, and that's just an archive that we can go back to later on and fish the order. And then what we do is we do a transform of that incoming order. We transform that to using XSLT, and this would have been BizTalk XSLT originally. I'm just trying to see if I can see. So this was a map that came directly out of BizTalk. It's the XSL, and it transforms it to a canonical representation of our order. So you can see we've drilled down to this order, we've got to there. And then in the next step, what we do is I said to you, we use service bus topics extensively. So I save this down to a service bus topic, and I actually give it the session ID of the purchase order. That's so that we can actually track this purchase order right throughout the process. And then the final part of this is we delete the file from the FTP folder. We have a lot of logic apps that are just cloned of this. And the idea is that the logic app does just one task and one task only, and very, very, very small discrete tasks. So what happens next, we've put the message down to this logic app. It's actually a canonical form. We then have one logic app, which is then processing this order into our My Bidfood application, so the order gets fulfilled. So to find that particular order, we need to go back to our logic app run, and I need to do another. Let's go post processing, so I can drill down on the post processing. There we go. So we have one logic app which will be processing then all the orders into our back end. Once again, I need to just change this to 3 days to actually find that. I'm going to have to go back to original query to just copy that purchase order ID. And if we're lucky, I put that into there. Oh, what have I done? Just what you don't want to happen. Okay, I don't know what I did, but anyway, we've found that order and it's going through this second logic app, which is purpose in life is to actually add the order to our back end. So now if we go to the customer processing logic app and we put this into here, we can see it'll come up with the exact run that did the work to put it into our My Bidfood. So I'll just show you there's the session ID that's coming in. It's the same message. We do a transform again to a SOAP message, and then we do a post to a service that is sitting on our web application. This is you'll probably notice if you look here, those of you that are BizTalk aficionados, this is a SOAP message. So this service is a very, very old service that has been migrated up to Azure in our My Bidfood. It still works very well, and that's how the orders get in. And then we do some error handling, etc. in there. I'll just go back and I'll just show you one of the important bits in all of our design. I've talked a lot about how you notice that the way we track these orders is based on the tracking ID. So on all our logic apps, on all of them, we always set a tracking ID, which is coming out of the message coming in. And in each case, we're looking for purchase order ID. So that's very specific for our tracking. So we've configured that as a customized view of everything that we do. So now I'll just go back to I'll break now from this demonstration. I'll go back and I'll review what we've done from I didn't want to go back to the beginning, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to have to reshare as well. I'm not sure which one we're working on column. Let's just first of all okay, we'll get this up first and I'll reshare it. Have to work out how to do this better at some stage. Yeah, I'm just trying to get to the current slide and I can't do it. I don't know why that's coming up all the time. Okay, and I'll just move down to the slide I want to get to, which is this slide here. Okay, so I've got that up, and now I have to share I have to find that StreamYard app. Okay. StreamYard is sharing this window.
We're currently sharing the logic app, so maybe stop sharing.
Okay. So what we need to do here, what do we need to do? Present, isn't that right?
Mhm.
Present slides. Oops, nope. What do I do here, Colin?
Stop sharing and reshare again.
Oh, I've got to stop sharing. And then I have to present, share screen, and then we want to share the presentation again. And okay, so hopefully everyone can see that. So I'm going to go and stand in front of the screen now.
I'm conscious that we're almost up to time, so I'm going to have to try and abbreviate somehow. So, right, got this. So, I just review what we've talked about, what I showed in the monitoring. So this is an architectural diagram of our customer stream, which is the stream where we're taking in orders from our customers and we're processing them down to our back end, our web service application. Up the top, I've just listed the different file formats that we have in our system. We have a fairly restricted number of file formats. We can accept JSON, CXML, customized XML, IDOCs, CSV, EDIFACT, X12, or email messages, which I hate. I know Colin hates them as well. So what I showed you was a message coming in from an FTP server, going to a folder on the FTP server. We then actually have a layer here of pre-processing logic apps. As I said, there will be a separate logic app for each customer. So this one here would have been the one for Subway, which has particular bits that are specific to Subway. But generally, these are much the same structure. So in a lot of cases, we're just cloning them. We use an integration account on our systems, and we use that for doing XSLC transform and flat file decoding. You could do both those actions using a standard logic app these days, but there's very good reasons why we use an integration account, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So then we saw that the message then gets put to rest at a service bus, on a service bus. And then there's another logic app that will pick this message up and it will process it through to our back-end BidDirect. Now the important thing to realize is that when our friends out there, the web team, are doing a major upgrade, there might be an outage. What we do is we just disable this logic app. In fact, I don't do it. It's our team out there. When they're doing outage, they'll disable this logic app, and all the orders will accumulate in that service bus until the outage is over. They then enable this, and the orders then flow to BidDirect. The other purpose of this service bus is that I said to you we'd like to record the messages in this custom database. So we actually have another subscription to this topic that uses the same message to process the message and put a copy of it into this database here. We could have put that logic into this one logic app, but we decided to separate concerns. So we have all the SQL inserts and that occurring separately from the order flow. And if you think about it, you don't want your order flow blocked by trying to do some archiving of data. The bit that I haven't shown is, of course, the return trip. So BidDirect, once it's processed the order, it will send out a purchase order acknowledgement, and we have a logic app that it sends that to. It then flows through another service bus, which then there can be many of these POAC logic apps that will grab the message and then send it back to the FTP server and then back to the customer. So that's sort of our customer stream, and Alistair will be looking at that and saying that's exactly what we did in our proof of concept, because it really is. We didn't change it much. One of the things I'll now just point out as a point of interest is this Azure function that we actually have. So you see we support FTP, SFTP, different pickups, and the email. So this Azure function accepts HTTP posts of any message format from any customer. Now, this really, the reason why we're using an Azure function for doing routing of messages, and it's also doing a little bit of validation. The reason why we're using that instead of Azure APIM is largely because back about 5 years ago we had an architect, an Uber architect, who didn't like Azure APIM. So what Alistair and I did is we'll fix them, and we just rolled our own Azure function that would do exactly the same task. Now, believe it or not, that Azure function works really, really well, but there are some drawbacks of it. So it started its life as a V1 Azure function. So that was running on the .NET framework runtime. We then upgraded it to .NET Core 3.1 very seamlessly. But now we're faced with an issue where we actually have to upgrade that to .NET Core 6 and the V4 runtime. That's one of the drawbacks if you use an Azure function. If we'd use APIM, we wouldn't have to worry about upgrades. It would have just done everything. So it's a little bit of a problem for us at the moment. And my next slide. You move the slide on for me.
It's the zero.
Manually.
I'm just going to talk about this one last topic, and then I think I'll call it a day. It should just be. No, it's not.
Select manually.
Gosh, I need to get our technology right.
Current.
Yeah, I'll try from the current slide. It's not going to work. I don't know what's going on here. I really don't. Maybe I've got to be on StreamYard for some reason. Don't know. Oh, that's the screen I want to be on. Okay, I'm not quite sure why the clicker's not working on that screen. So you may or may not be aware that Microsoft are discontinuing support for V3. I call them V3 functions. And what you must do is you must actually upgrade your function to the runtime version 4, and which uses .NET 6. So we have to go through that pain, and it's a fairly major bit of pain because we have a lot of orders coming in on that Azure function. If we'd used Azure APIM, we would not have had to worry. Oh, it's working. Excellent. So I was going to talk about the architecture of our supplier stream, which I was going to mention. Mary was heavily involved with this. I'm not going to walk you through that, but it uses a very similar technology. The only thing that I would mention is that
This is the reason why we need an integration account, in that we're doing a lot of messaging via AS2 EDIFACT, and I think it's very difficult in Azure to do that without an integration account. You can't do that with, as far as I'm aware, with standard logic apps. So I should probably mention that all our logic apps are consumption logic apps. And that's an architectural slide of our invoice and credits architecture, which I'm going to buzz through. I was going to talk you through that, but I haven't got time. I want to finish up by talking to you about what's next. So once we've got everything in Azure, there's several points that there's two things that we think we want to do. So you probably realise that a lot of our logic apps are very similar. And at the moment, what happens is if we want to bring on board a new customer, what we have to do is we have to, what's the word for it? There's a request comes into our developers, and what we have to do is clone a logic app, maybe make a few changes, and then deploy it. But in theory, it should be very easy to create some sort of admin console which actually collects the information that's different. It then goes off and it creates a ARM template, or in DevOps, just deploys the new logic app, and away we go. So that's the dream, is that
we should be able to help. So when you do that, we've done that up to a point. We are deploying API in CI/CD and also logic app so somebody can come and delete everything.
all right.
And then we can start from scratch. So hit us up.
Yep. I'll come and ask you about that after we finish. And the other thing that we want to do is we want to expand the use of API and create a product called a universal API. And Mary, when she came here, she was the champion of this, and progressed this to a stage where we've done some proof of concepts. So we have the idea of this as a portal where third parties can come in and consume our APIs. I think that that's probably where I should stop for tonight. So I think I'll leave it there. I was going to do a demo of our universal API, but I won't. So I'll finish there. So if there's any questions, I'm quite willing to answer them.
So Mark, what was your main three, pain points when removing BizTalk or the migration?
So one of the biggest pain points for us was the number of third parties that whitelist IP addresses. So especially with customers that have FTP or SFTP endpoints, and most of our customers, I don't want to criticise them, but they're food businesses, so their prime thing is not IT, so they don't have sophisticated IT teams, and they tend to understand the security is all based around whitelisting IP addresses. And whereas in BizTalk, in the BizTalk server world, we have two nodes, so we were whitelisting the two nodes plus our DR environment. So there's 3 IP addresses these guys had to control. When we shifted to Azure, of course, the number of IP addresses you have to whitelist is enormous. There's quite a lot, and it depends on the region. So every time I contacted one of our third parties and said, can you change your whitelisting? We would get kickback because, why do you need so many IP addresses? So that was a bit of an issue. The other issue would be, I talked about it in my talk, integration account for AS2 EDIFACT and integration account itself, it probably hasn't changed for 5 years. And to be honest, there are some bits in that integration account, especially on AS2 EDIFACT, which is very hard to understand. I suppose one point which took us a long time to understand is that when you have to put in schemas that represent your EDIFACT version. And the way Microsoft did it is you actually have to have a specific root node assigned for the EDIFACT. And that's quite painful. And I just don't understand why it doesn't work with just putting a schema in there. So those were the 2 pain points that I considered.
What was the main driver of BidOne moving from on-prem to Azure?
So it was future-proofing our applications and our intellectual property. So you may not agree with me, but 5 years ago, their BizTalk server was in a bit of a state. There was no guarantee that Microsoft were going to create any future versions. So there was no real clear, to us, it seemed like there was no support. So when I did my original proposal, I think there had been no new version of BizTalk for, I think, 3.5 years. So it seemed to us that Microsoft really were not behind BizTalk server anymore. And I think that still is the case. So we decided, right, we're going to jump ship now because we could see that the Azure product was suitable. So that was the main driver. We didn't do it to save money. I would say to you that probably our Azure exchange probably cost that's the reason why we did it. Not going to save you any money.
One more. How much percentage of the BizTalk artifacts from on-prem to Azure is still being used by when you're migrating up, like schemas and maps?
Okay, so Mary can tell you because we had, I don't know, hundreds of AS2 agreements and EDIFACT agreements that we were using in BizTalk. We could reuse all those in Azure. I don't know whether you've done much AS2 EDIFACT development, but those agreements, support, even in BizTalk, they take a long time to create. So we didn't want to do that all again. Also, some of our maps that were in BizTalk, XSLT maps, I didn't create. They were created by someone who I don't even know, but worked on them like 8 years ago. So I think BizTalk server, the first BizTalk server version that was here was probably 2004, 2006. And some of those maps go back to that day. So we literally just shut our eyes, converted the map to XSLT, shifted it up to Azure. We didn't look at all the crazy logic that was in the maps. I mean, some of them we did have a look at, but we just didn't have the time to go and see what's going on under the hood, as long as it worked in Azure. So that was a critical bit. So we used the maps. The orchestration logic that you'd find in BizTalk, you would actually have to, a developer would have to look at that and recreate that in one or several logic apps. So you couldn't reuse that directly. But you can use your map artifacts, you can use your schemas. I could tell you a very interesting story about schema validation, that you can use the same schemas you use in BizTalk to do the validation. So we reused a lot out of this, and a lot of it, apart from doing regression testing to make sure the messages were the same, we didn't bother to actually look at what the map logic was. If it was really bad logic, we just left it as it was. We didn't go back and look at it. I did actually have a very long discussion about 4 years ago with a MVP in the UK, Michael Stevenson. We went out drinking and we started to talk about migrations. And he had a very, very different idea of migrations to me. He said, "Oh no, you don't want to look at what you're doing in BizTalk. You just want to start everything from scratch and build it." And I said to him, "But that would take years to recreate all the logic." But he was of the opinion that it's an opportunity to refresh everything. But that's not what we did.
You should ask about the EDIFACT.
If you can, I can literally say that I did actually look at some of the maps that another developer that I've never met, created, and I really think that guy must have been on drugs. But anyway, I left it as it was. It works.
I guess the value's gone up since I was here, but how many dollars a year go through the EDI system now?
I don't know. Clint, you must know.
Back in a minute.
Okay, we'll get the answer soon.
Any performance bottlenecks you guys experienced during the development?
So that's one winner out of there. To be fair, we probably didn't get performance issues in our BizTalk service. Occasionally we might, but in Azure we have no performance issues whatsoever. It probably is also a little bit to do with our design, and that we actually have points of persistence. But we have had an instance, tell us while Justine's out of the room, we actually had one of our service bus topics we weren't picking up from, and we hadn't picked up for literally a month. It was a month's worth of invoices. And that was quite a significant volume of invoices sitting there. We were able to pick up on the service bus. It just chewed through those in sort of like half a day. There was no performance impact at all, it just worked. So yeah, I'm very what's the word for it? I don't know. Ask Mary, what do you think about the performance in Azure versus BizTalk?
Smooth. Like in BizTalk, you will occasionally have to restart the host instance, but we don't have this kind of issues in Azure. It's quite smooth.
Love it.
Here's your answer.
So, Mark, did you have any problems with any factoids in the maps? Or?
Yes. So in my talk there, when you're migrating the maps, most of the standard factoids they will translate to XSLT that you can run in Azure. But there are a couple of factoids that you cannot run you cannot just translate. So the ones that you can't are the database lookups. So, and the other one is if people have written custom functoids. So I hate people that write custom functoids or use custom functoids like Sandra Pereira. And also there is an ex-Datacom guy who used to like writing custom functoids all over the place, and he did actually work on some of the maps that I had to migrate. It's a fairly simple fix for custom functoids. All you do is you just put all the code into a scripting functoid, and then the issue of using the XSLT and Azure goes away. For the database lookup functoids that Microsoft had, the solution was to just take the database lookups out of the maps, and so it's very easy in Azure to do a database lookup as a different shape out before the map, and then you can enrich the map using logic app definition language very easily. So those are two issues when you're using XSLT. I think I wrote about quite an interesting way to do database lookups just recently. So one of the things with some customers, we have to do a mapping between UIMs, so that's the unit of measure for different products. And if you can think about it, in an order you can probably have 100 items or more. You might have 250. And in the map, if you were having to do a database lookup using the lookup shapes inside Azure, that would be quite a lot of work to actually do all those products on the fly. So Michael Stevenson, the MVP that I had the argument with in the UK, he showed me a very nice solution inside APIM using a mock, which does the UIM lookups really, really nicely and quickly, and also provides caching. And you can call that inside your maps. In the XSLT, if you're interested, I can talk about that, but I have written a blog about it. Yeah.
One last, which one solution do you guys filter out duplicates of like purchase?
Do we filter out duplicates? So we have the luxury of not filtering out duplicates. If I had to filter out duplicates, I would do it using the Service Plus. So a long time ago, the solution that we inherited inside my Bidfood, we do not allow the updating of purchase orders once they get into Azure. So if a duplicate purchase order comes along, we just start it. We don't actually have to worry about duplicates. In terms of our processing, when we're sending invoices out, we don't extract duplicates because quite often we send another invoice for the same invoice to get somebody to send out, so that's not an issue. On the supplier stream side, we have some fairly rigorous rules that don't allow us to actually send the same supplier order out twice, but that's not controlled in our Azure exchange. It's actually constrained in customs Bidfood out anywhere it is. I have fairly strict controls that make sure we don't order 2 pallets of the same thing by warehouse because of the online. So I know where you come from. You're lucky to go. All right. Some more food and drink, or we've got to go.
No.
You're going to tell us what the numbers
Oh,
are?
yeah. Well, I'll say thank you.
Yeah.
Getting to hear about it from we've lived it. And it's
Fine,
lovely
fine
to have
enough.
Ellie and Mary here because they were both so integral to getting us along the road. So it's really cool. In answer to your question, this year, 1 million orders, $800 million. COVID nailed us big time in this segment because all of those big corporate businesses are the ones really affected. So Mark's side of the business particularly, or channel of orders I should say, was the one most affected through the lockdowns. But it has bounced back with a hiss and a roar for the most part. And integration is not slow. So there's always a job of work. But 1 million orders, it was the last year it was 750, so it's really pulled back up.
And I didn't talk about it, I was going to. We have some alerts that are running on all our logic apps. So we actually count, we have a canary that's sitting there all the time. Canary in the coal mine tells us something wrong. So if one of our logic apps doesn't get a certain number of messages through it within a particular hour, we get an alert that comes out, which is sort of informational. It actually tells us that something might be wrong. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it isn't. So we're using an AI. We didn't build it, Microsoft did, but it's using AI. So what it does, it looks back the last 7 days of the orders or invoices, and it says, this is the number we expect between a particular time frame. And if we don't get it, it sends out a thing. Anyway, I want to have a drink and something to eat. So I hope you enjoy it. And Colin can shut down the stream. Hold on, everybody.